So in this segment, we're going to be talking about a year since Brexit. Fishermen in Cornwall say they were sold a dream. And the thing is, right, I've read through this article, and the headline gives you the impression like maybe they finally figured it out and they've learnt their lesson, but no, it's worse. Way worse. And I'd probably title the video, Cornwall's Fishermen Still Don't Get It. But skipper James Chunky Chown makes the tricky task of boarding his trawler, the Ajax, at Newland Harbour in Cornwall look easy. I mean, surely you'll name it after something British, not something Dutch. But, okay, good start. But when it comes to fishing, he tells The Independent, everything is difficult now due to the post-Brexit rules, the paperwork, the legislation, the endless bureaucracy. It takes time and it costs money. You know, Johnson never warned them of this during the referendum. He says it wasn't meant to be this way. Polls suggest that 90... Well, how was it meant to be then? That's kind of the question, actually. How was it meant to be? Because we're a third country now, and this is how third countries get dealt with. So how was it meant to be? That's what they should have asked him. Polls suggested that 92% of the UK fishing industry voted to leave the EU amid promises that they would benefit from taking back control of British waters. They wanted the old 12-mile limit, which the EU weren't going to give, because either you keep you get the 12-mile limit and you lose your fishing market due to tariffs, or you keep things as they are now, and you keep your existing market, but with paperwork. Had we remained a part of the single market, and I think the customs union, we wouldn't be having these problems. But here we are. The new post-Brexit fishing rules that came into force at the start of the year were described in July by the National Federation of Fishermen's Organisations as a sellout. Today, the mood is sang-froid. I mean, well, they were kind of sold out, but at the end of the day, you know, if they voted Tory, which the people of Cornwall have done, which we're going to talk about towards the end of the video, I think, why are you not going to your local MP saying, look, man, we need the situation resolved. What are you going to do about it? Surely that's what you do, but instead like, nah, bro, the stupid EU and the stupid paperwork and this, the government sold us a dream, but we're not going to do anything about it because, you know, what's the point of protesting in that, man? We'll just get used to it, you know, and when 2026 comes around, you know, we'll get more quota and stuff. Like, that's not going to happen, dog. That ain't going to happen. The only thing that's going to happen is your industry is going to be decimated by 2026. Still, he is clear that Brexit has brought new pressures. Oh no. The first time we tried to land pollock in Roscoff, Brittany, which is in France, we were told to go over to Brest, a port further south, apparently for no reason whatsoever. He says the French seem to enjoy these new regulations. I mean, maybe there's reasons for that. Maybe the port at Roscoff was full, or maybe, you know, the other port is better at dealing with paperwork, or maybe the port in Roscoff didn't want to deal with all the paperwork and all the other stuff, because it sounds like they tried to land it directly into France, so they were told to go to another port because they couldn't be asked to deal with the paperwork. Or maybe that other paperwork specialises in dealing with it. Because we lost about £12,000 of fish that day, Chone adds. These days we don't land in France at all. So they want to land in France to kind of avoid a lot of the paperwork. But I wouldn't be surprised if there were specific rules around why they couldn't do this. Let's not forget the UK has started sabre rattling with French fishermen. And I wouldn't be surprised if these kind of landing places said, no, we don't want to deal with you guys because your government keeps causing us problems. That's possible as well. But we go on. For Chone, a fisherman who likes to catch a variety of fish and seasonally, being restricted to one market can be inefficient and constraining. He said, we were the first boat to land in France after Brexit. He says, you know, surely that should have been victorious, the first one, you know, but he says complications were immediately there. The French can be very militant. Wow, the French, you know, how are you going to malign France for taking control of their borders? You know, I thought that's what we wanted to do, and now suddenly the French are the villains? If they don't get their way, they've been known to unload fish from lorries and pour diesel on them and set them on fire. I mean, that seems slightly excessive, but, you know, I would question if they don't get their way, they've been known to unload fish. I mean, that doesn't sound 100% right. I mean, to be fair, it doesn't sound like he's verifying this actually has happened. But the issue is that this is how they control their border. They stop, you know, fish that may be bad for consumers getting in. And maybe it sends a message to people like, play by the rules, or, you know, you lose your catch. I don't know. But, yeah. This is the life of third country. Changing between pollock and hack is more sustainable, but we can't do that now. We got a very good price for hack here. I think he's talking about in France. So we're doing okay financially. But I think things need to change long term. I want to catch pollock too. British people buying more fish would be good, being less reliant on European trade. The problem is British people don't want to buy the kinds of fish that you're selling. That's the main problem, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. We'd like to see different ports open up. Why do we have to go through France? I'd like to go straight to Spain. That would make life easier. Now, the only thing I can think of is maybe Spain's further away, or maybe Spain have different rules on third country catches. I don't know, because if you think, right, Cornwall's like around here, I think, somewhere. I have no idea where Cornwall is, but they're going straight to France, right? So they must be somewhere around this area, right? So going all the way to Spain is way further out. You know, Spain's all the way down here. I mean, I've heard of Scottish fishermen going straight to Denmark, to be fair, but I think that gap between, say, Aberdeen and one of these kind of, I'm not going to pronounce these kind of places in Denmark, probably closer than between the UK and Spain, I'm going to argue. But yeah, so not a strong argument there. And maybe you'll face the same problems in Spain. I mean, I doubt that Spain are more adept at dealing with third countries than France are, given that Spain wouldn't have to do it as much, and Spain probably haven't been preparing as much because they don't have to do it. So he talks about changing policy, British people buying more fish, but that's not going to happen because, you know, people like what they like. British people like white flakier fish, which is found more in Norway. So these are kind of the distribution of cod and fish, cod. You've got some around Britain, but predominantly it's around, Scandinavian countries, further up here into the very, very cold areas. And you've got some around here, around the USA. I think that's Greenland here, I'm going to say. My geography is pretty bad. But, some of it is around the UK, but not a ton. And that's a problem for, British fishermen. But point being is that, you fish what's around you, and, the stuff like mackerel that people don't want, sardines, oily fish, which I actually quite like, by the way. British people don't typically eat those, so what do? You have to export them. Still today, 60 to 70% of fish caught and landed in Britain heads to France even, Spain and Italy beyond. There remains an urgency to trade with Europe, even though there's a newfound ambivalence, and this is the problem that these people fail to understand. Europe was always your key market. Your 70% of fish, 60 to 70%, so the vast majority of fish landed in Britain is exported. So how you guys thought you could live without your main export market is beyond me. Where were you going to export fish to? Japan? God. Because fishing has never been plain sailing. Maybe the Brexit vote among those in the industry should be no surprise. For years, communities by the sea have felt disconnected and forgotten, but government pledges have failed to transpire. So do you know what you do in that case, right? You go to your Tory MPs, right? Where is the list? Here it is. You've got here George Eustace, the DEFRA guy, right? You've got Scott Mann. You've got Cheryl Murray, Steve Doble, Derek Thomas, Chalaine McRory. All of these people are Tories. All of your local MPs are Tories. Why the hell did you not go up to your local Tory MPs, right, and be like, yo, look, you guys have promised so much here in the seaside. We've got none of it. If you guys continue this, I'm not going to vote for you, and I'm going to tell other people not to vote for you. But instead, you're like, oh, do you know what we're going to do is we're going to vote to leave our biggest export market. Me, I'm so clever. Me. Honestly, me. Sorry if that sound annoys people, but that's how I kind of hear these people in my head. How did you think this was going to work out? You voted Brexit, you voted Tory, and this is the reality of your situation now. Paul Treblicock, manager at the 300-year-old Cornish fish company. I mean, 300 years old. Like, this predates the World Wars. It's crazy how old some of these companies are. Ocean Fish says, senior people from the government came down here, made us promises. We had Michael Gove standing here on the harbour telling us we would have greater control over our seas and a greater share of our fish. I mean, realistically, what these people thought would happen is they would go back to the old 12-mile limit. They would essentially probably bankrupt a load of EU fishermen in certain areas, right? And they would keep their export market. That was never going to happen. Why the hell would the EU agree to that? It's stupid. One of the main reasons we actually got the trade and cooperation agreement was because of fishing. The UK had to offer a lot of concessions around fishing and essentially let the EU keep really what the status quo was before we joined, the common fisheries policy. So it's just crazy, like, people thought like this. Nothing has changed. I mean, that's not true. I mean, a lot has changed. You got massive amounts of paperwork, fish dying before it even reaches France. So that's not really true, is it? We're pretty much in the same position as we were before. By what metric? I don't want to question someone who really works in the industry, but when you've got fishermen, especially in Scotland, constantly complaining about the amounts of paperwork, it makes me think that maybe this guy, he doesn't want to admit how bad the problems are because maybe he voted for him. I don't know. Maybe indirectly he voted for him. Maybe we're a little worse off. I'd say it sounds like you're a lot worse off. He says Scottish industry has benefited from Brexit. I mean, no, they haven't. Predominantly because they would export a lot. Yes, they've got more of a quota share for catching fish like mackerel, but mackerel's not worth a lot, compared to cod, and they have to export that anyways because, like I said, people in the UK don't really eat oily fish. They have access to more fish, but that's more fish they're going to have to export, and it's going to go through the same checks as before. That's why Scottish fishermen, some of them are quite mad about the current situation. But, this guy only sees it as, yes, we can catch more fish. That means more better. Where are we going to sell fish to? No, don't worry about that. We catch more fish. We win. Honestly, man. Ahead of the EU referendum, ministers championing the patriotic deal for the UK becoming an independent coastal state like big fishing nations like Norway and Iceland, one of the main selling points were reclaiming our seas. I mean, it didn't happen though, did it? Norway at least has a deal with the EU overfishing. The UK failed to get that because we decided to mess around and find out, and boy did we find out. Sorry, is the audio playing here? No, it's not. It's muted. Great. Don't have my headphones on. After the EU referendum, ministers championing the patriotic idea of the UK becoming like Norway. Today, only waters up to 6 miles of land are reserved for UK fishing boats. Fishermen have been told this would be increased to 12 miles post-Brexit. I mean, so what they're telling you is, oh yeah, we've been lied to. Okay, what are you going to do about it, pal? That's the question. I'm getting bored of just dunking on these guys and these guys and gals. Really, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to protest? Are you going to talk to your local MPs? Or are you going to be like, oh, it's going to be fine in 2026 when we negotiate everything and the EU crumbles once again? Because I may have read something in the Express like, dude, like, come on. Because we've been massively shortchanged. So what are you going to do? Treblecock says, the increase in quota share for various species has been marginal, which again, the EU were never going to concede on this. There's also been the issue of the 6 to 12 mile limit, which we were told would be ours, but that isn't happening. So more lies. He says West Country fishermen want the government to be braver. How much braver do you want them to be, pal? Because if they are, you're going to see tariffs on your fish. You're talking between 5 and 30%. That's a lot of money. And you're going to see maybe a boycott from people within the EU have said, look, you're trying to mess around here. You're trying to bankrupt our fishermen. We're not buying your fish. That's what you might see. Treblecock backs a tougher stance from the UK, pushing for a bigger share, even if it means the French retaliating and making trade more difficult. I mean, again, what do these people think, right? You export 60 to 70% of your fish. It goes through France predominantly, okay? Some of the fishermen go to Denmark, I think it is, directly. What do you think is going to happen, dog? Your fresh fish is going to die in the boxes, in the storage containers. It's going to be worth less when it gets to the French markets. Is that what you want? Honestly? These guys, man, honestly, they just see like short-term victories. Yes, we catch more fish. Now we sell more fish. Oh, fish price in France has gone up. Why? We want the government to stand up for us. I mean, bruv, they're not going to because you're a small part of the economy and you're not worth a ton in votes. They played you, dog. You've been had. You've been took. You've been bamboozled. Yes, the EU could respond by raising taxes, for example, so tariffs, and we need avenues to trade. But they need us too. British waters are full of beautiful fish. So are EU waters, pal, and maybe there'll be less choice in the EU, but they have more than 27 countries because there's still Norway as well to fish in. They have fish from all of these different kinds of waters. Yeah, they might not get access to the ones they specifically want, but we're going to lose an export market and we're going to have even less access to the fish that we want. Anthony Hendy, 30 years a fisherman, only goes out a day at a time. He says the first half of the year was really hard. In the last 6 months, I've made more money because fish has been getting a better price, probably because of an increase in demand. But I do see the landscape changing here. The fleet has diminished and it's much harder to get a boat out to fish, which again, that's not the EU's fault. He goes, the 6 mile limit is a big problem for us because a lot of our fleet here is in smaller boats which don't go out in terrible weather. Not usually. Anyways, I mean, sounds like a British problem. He goes, the Belgians and the French go out in any conditions because they have huge trawlers subsidised by the government and it makes no difference to them. Now, I don't know if they're actually subsidised by the government, but surely at that point you're like, the British government have to subsidise us then, because there's no way the French and the Belgians are going to get rid of their subsidies. So either the UK helps out and subsidises boats, or these industries go. And I think that's what's going to happen. You know, the UK are already kind of, happy to destroy farming. So what makes fishing any different? They say we're going to import more food from abroad. We'll probably import more fish from abroad as well. It's hard being sat here, seeing them coming up within the 6 miles from the coast, getting all the fish that should be ours. It's not sustainable. I mean, it's not yours though, is it? Because they're inside their limit. So it's not ours. Not really. It's not sustainable trawling the seas every day anyways. Well, I mean, again, this sounds like a you problem, dog. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to talk to the government? What are you going to do? Lobby your local MP? When trade negotiations reopen in 26, everyone is hoping for a fairer deal. How do you define a fairer deal? What do you want, a 7-mile limit? A 10-mile limit? You're not getting 12? Honestly. Chris Ranford, the new CEO of the Cornish Fish Producers Organisation, it's no secret that fishermen supported Brexit for the most part because they were told their livelihoods would improve. Well, it hasn't, has it? And they say nothing has changed. If nothing has changed, why are you guys always moaning about it? What's the point of this article then? It clearly has changed and you guys are not happy about it, but you won't admit you were wrong. And if you won't admit you were wrong, nothing will change. Because there's a feeling of getting on with it now. There are positives. What positives? What are the positives? Do you like paperwork? Do you like border checks? Do you like the French leering at your fish? What's the positive here, my friend? We can find solutions towards and work towards 2026 again. Do you think the UK are really going to push for fishing in 2026? I mean, what will the election be? So say if we have an election in 23, the next election will be, say, it'll be 27. After that, potentially, maybe it might become a slight election issue. But, let's be real here, dog. If you don't vote for a different party, they're going to take your vote for granted. Unless you stay home, of course, which I don't think you're going to do. Because hopefully the bigger boats will get an easier ride too and can land in Europe and get a fair price for their bigger hauls. Maybe, I mean, that could be something that's negotiated now, potentially even something where they could talk about it, as an issue. But considering we keep saber rattling with the French, I don't think that's going to happen, big man. The mood might have been more 12 months ago. It isn't now. Discontent is here, but the fishermen in Newland carry on dropping their nets in the hope of catching Cornish fish. I mean, yes, they're optimistic, which is great, but that kind of toxic optimism of, things will get better and in a few years we can renegotiate, this will kill them in 2026. This will kill their industry because that hope shouldn't be there because nothing will fundamentally change. Sound like Joe Biden now, but you can see the map here where cod is predominantly fished around. You've got the the top fish landed by the UK. I mean, mackerel, people don't like that in the UK. Herring is more of a Dutch thing. I think that's one of their, they like herring over there. Blue whiting or whiting, never heard of that. Crabs, I think it's more of a European thing that's consumed, more middle class. Haddock is something they eat in the UK. Scallops, I think that's more of a French thing. Cod at 29%, that's a UK thing. We enjoy that. But these are, in 2019, this doesn't take into account, the Norway problem as well. I couldn't find more up-to-date statistics, which is a problem, considering these are like a few years old. But I would assume that, mackerel and herring have probably gone up. And things like haddock and cod have gone down because we've lost the agreement with Norway. So again, you can see already, before these kind of problems arose, the lack of kind of catching the fish British people actually eat. Go on, there's a couple more things I want to talk about. The UK consumers prefer cod and haddock. We eat these fish more than any other nation. This is the fish served at most fish and chip shops. Most of this comes from the Icelandic, Norwegian and Barnett seas. Where around 1/12 of the total is caught by British trawler Quota. And the problem is now that fishing boat is not actually catching them because they can't go into the Nordic seas. That's a huge problem. And they do list the problem as being the British consumer. The big five, the big 5 species of fish, are cod, haddock, tuna, salmon and prawns. These are fish you can't really get, fish around in the UK. Predominantly, you have to import those. That's a problem, especially with the Quota being out of commission. So again, fishermen, they just don't get it. And how long have I been ranting in this video for? About 20 minutes, right? So we won't go on too much longer. But if I were these fishermen, if I was living in George Eustace's constituency, or Scott Not the Man, or Cheryl Murray, these areas, I'd be lobbying my MP and saying, look, man, we're getting hammered out here. These other guys are having subsidies from their government. Are you going to help us? What are you going to do? Because if you don't help us, maybe if I lived in this seat here, George Eustace seat, maybe you vote Labour. Maybe here you vote Lib Dem if you live in Scott Ban's seat. Yes, these people have large majorities. But we've seen shifts. If people stay home and people decide to change their vote, we've seen shifts. And maybe George Eustace doesn't have a 8,700 majority next time. Maybe it's only 2,000 or 3,000. He's going to get a bit twitchy. But it's painful, isn't it? It's very painful having to listen to these people constantly moan and then not do anything to change their lives. It does get frustrating, doesn't it? The fishermen in Cornwall, at least the fishermen interviewed, still don't get it. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.